When you hear the word Witcher, what comes to mind? Maybe it's Geralt of Rivia standing in a swamp with two swords strapped to his back. Maybe it's the roar of a griffin in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Or maybe it's Henry Cavill grumbling in the Netflix adaptation. But here's the thing. Before all that, before the worldwide fandom, before the open world RPG that changed gaming forever, The Witcher started out as a single short story, just one, written in Poland, published in a small fantasy magazine. And that story, against all odds, would snowball into a global phenomenon. Today, we're going to trace that journey from Andrzej Sapkowski, the man who created Geralt, to Ciri Projekt Red, the studio that risked everything to bring the world of The Witcher to life in video games. We'll talk about the messy development cycles, the triumphs, the controversies, and how the series grew from a local curiosity into one of the most important RPG sagas ever made. So let's go back to the very beginning. The year is 1985. A Polish economist named Andrzej Sapkowski decides to enter a short story contest. The contest is run by Fantastica, one of the biggest science fiction and fantasy magazines in Poland. Sapkowski's stories? It's called The Witcher. In it, we meet Geralt of Rivia, a professional monster hunter, a man who's been mutated through alchemy, trained since childhood, paid to slay the beasts that terrorize common folk. The plot centers on Geralt taking on a contract to deal with Striga, a cursed princess who transforms into a monster by night. And already in the very first story, the hallmarks of Sapkowski's writing are there. Moral ambiguity, sharp dialogue, and a dark fairy tale atmosphere. Now here's the fun part. Sapkowski didn't even win first place in the contest, but readers loved it. Letters came pouring in, people wanted more of this Witcher, so he kept writing. Through the late 80s and early 90s, Sapkowski expanded his Witcher universe, first with a short story, later collected into The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny, then with a full-blown 5-book saga. By the mid-90s, Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri were household names in Poland. The series became a cornerstone of Polish fantasy literature. But outside of Central and Eastern Europe, practically nobody knew it existed. But that was about to change. Let's fast forward to the early 1990s. In Warsaw, two friends, Marcin Iwinski and Michael Kaczynski, are making a living importing Western PC games into Poland. At the time, the Polish game scene is basically the Wild West. Piracy is rampant, official releases are rare, and translation almost non-existent. So the two start a company, Ciri Projekt. At first, they're just localizers and distributors, but deep down, they have a bigger dream. They don't just want to sell other people games, they want to make their own. By the early 2000s, they start taking steps towards development, and one day, they land the opportunity of a lifetime, the rights to make a video game based on The Witcher. Now here's where the story gets interesting. Andrzej Sapkowski wasn't exactly enthusiastic. He didn't believe video games could capture his work, or that they'd even matter. So when Ciri Projekt offered him a deal, he sold them the rights for a lump sum, a flat fee. No royalties, no profit sharing, just cash up front. At the time, it seems reasonable. After all, Poland didn't really have a track record of big successful games. Sapkowski even said it later that he didn't believe in their chances. Of course, looking back, that decision cost them millions. But with the rights secured, Ciri Projekt had their chance. Now they just needed to actually build a game. Ciri Projekt Red, the development branch of the company, officially kicked off the project in 2003. And let me tell you, the road to release was rocky. For one, this was their first real RPG. The team was inexperienced. They didn't have the budget of a BioWare or a Bethesda studio, so they borrowed BioWare's Aurora engine, the tech behind Neverwinter Nights. But adapting Sapkowski's morally complex world into an RPG system wasn't easy. Combat had to be designed, choices had to matter. The script had to walk a fine line between staying true to Sapkowski's tone and creating something new. 4 years later, in 2007, they released The Witcher. And you might wonder, how was it? Well, the combat was clunky, the animations were stiff, the loading times were painful, and the English localization, let's just say it, left a lot to be desired. But here's the thing, despite all of those flaws, the heart of the game was undeniable. The writing was sharp, the choices were morally grey, and players felt like their decisions actually changed the world around them. This wasn't just another RPG, it had an edge. It sold over 1 million copies for a debut RPG from a studio in Poland. That was a huge success. And CD Projekt wasn't done. They went back, patched it, fixed the localization, improved the performance, and released The Witcher Enhanced Edition. The version cemented their reputation as a studio that listened and cared. They had survived. Now it was time to grow. By 2011, CD Projekt Red had leveled up. This wasn't just the team that made The Witcher. This was a studio ready to take on the world. For The Witcher 2 Assassins of Kings, they abandoned the borrowed Aurora engine and built their own technology, the Red engine. That decision gave them freedom. They could finally craft the kind of cinematic, choice-driven RPG they'd always wanted, without being limited by someone else's tool. And it showed. When The Witcher 2 dropped in May 2011, it was immediately clear. CD Projekt Red wasn't playing small anymore. The visuals were stunning for the time. Dense forest, bustling towns, detailed character models, the cinematic presentation rivaled BioWare's Mass Effect. But the real standout was the storytelling. This wasn't a fantasy tale of good versus evil. This was politics, betrayal, assassinations, and shifting alliances. You weren't saving the world. You were trying to survive in a world already corrupted. And the boldest move? Act 2. Depending on the choices you made in Act 1, you would play through an entirely different second act. Different maps, different characters, different quests. Most RPGs at the time offered small variations in dialogue or endings. CD Projekt split the game in half. That meant most players only ever saw half of the content in a single playthrough. It was risky, it was ambitious, and it worked. Of course, the game wasn't perfect. The difficulty spikes were brutal, the learning curve was steep, and the console version didn't arrive until a year later with the Enhanced Edition. But still, The Witcher 2 was a statement. Critics praised it, fans praised it, and suddenly CD Projekt was no longer a scrappy local developer. They were being compared to giants of the RPG world. And with that, the path was set. If The Witcher was the proof of concept, and The Witcher 2 was the breakthrough, then the next game would be the masterpiece. (2015), the year The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt dropped. This wasn't just another RPG release. It was a landmark moment in gaming. CD Projekt Red went all in. The budget skyrocketed, the team expanded, and their ambitions to build the best open-world RPG ever made. And honestly, they pulled it off. The Witcher 3 delivered a massive open world that still felt handcrafted. Villages felt alive. Forests felt dangerous. Cities felt bustling. And the writing? It wasn't just about the main quest. Side quests were often as rich and memorable as the central storyline. Everyone remembers the Bloody Baron questline. Everyone remembers how their choices left them unsettled, unsure if they'd made the right choice. The game was gorgeous. The soundtrack blended Slavic folk with sweeping orchestration. The combat system was refined, the monsters memorable, and the expansions, Heart of Stone and Blood and Wine, were so good they could have been full games in their own right. By the time the dust settled, The Witcher 3 had sold tens of millions of copies and won Game of the Year award across the industry. And for CD Projekt, it was a dream come true. But success brings baggage. Remember Sapkowski, the author who sold the rights for a flat fee? As The Witcher 3 exploded, he realized just how much money he had left on the table. By 2018, he demanded additional compensation, claiming CD Projekt owed him royalties. The dispute turned into a public legal battle. Eventually, the two parties reached a settlement. It was a messy reminder that books and the games may share characters and a universe, but they are separate creations. Sapkowski often stresses that the games are not canon to his novels, but without his work, there would be no Witcher games. Meanwhile, CD Projekt Red moved on to the next big project, Cyberpunk 2077, but they never abandoned The Witcher. Even after The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt wrapped up Geralt's story arc, the franchise only got bigger. Let's talk about the legacy first. The Witcher didn't just succeed, it changed the perception of Polish game development. Before CD Projekt Red, Poland wasn't seen as a hotspot for world-class RPGs. But after The Witcher 3, suddenly the studio was being compared to giants like BioWare and Bethesda. CD Projekt had shown that you didn't need to be based in California, Montreal, or Tokyo to make a genre-defining game. The Witcher also set new standards for how studios could treat players. Remember the free DLCs? In an era where publishers were charging money for horse armors or cosmetic skins, CD Projekt dropped 16 pieces of DLC for free. New quests, armor sets, even new characters. That generosity built a huge amount of goodwill. Players felt like CD Projekt Red actually cared about them. That reputation, before the controversy around Cyberpunk 2077, was a huge part of why The Witcher 3 was embraced so passionately. And then there's the storytelling legacy, the Bloody Baron questline, the tragic choices in Heart of Stone, and the sunlit farewell of Blood and Wine. These are held up as some of the best narrative design in gaming. Even years later, developers point to The Witcher 3 as the gold standard for side quest. It proved that an RPG doesn't have to choose between skill and depth, it can have both. But The Witcher wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Let's look at the future. In 2022, CD Projekt Red dropped a bombshell. Multiple new Witcher games were in development, not just one, an entire new saga, and the first confirmed project in the saga is The Witcher 4. Official announcements reveal that The Witcher 4 will start a new trilogy, shifting the focus from Geralt to Ciri as the playable protagonist. In December 2024, the debut cinematic trailer confirmed Ciri in the lead role, making it clear that this is her story now. Then, in mid-2025, at the State of Unreal event, they showed a tech demo built on Unreal Engine 5, featuring Ciri exploring parts of the Witcher world, lush natural environments, a marketplace scene, horse riding, visual upgrades. It was made very clear that this is a tech demo, not the final gameplay, but it gives a strong hint at that direction the CD Projekt Red is aiming for. Alongside The Witcher 4, CD Projekt Red also confirmed a full remake of the original 2007 Witcher game, and another spin-off in development, codenamed Sirius for multiplayer. Of course, there's still a lot left unsaid. Release windows, not locked down. CD Projekt has cautioned that the tech demo doesn't represent final visuals or gameplay. Expectations are high, especially given past missteps, but so far, the reveals give a lot of reason for optimism. So, why does this story matter? Because The Witcher is proof of how far a story can travel. From one man's short story in a Polish magazine, to novels beloved across Europe, to a video game series that redefined what RPGs could be. It's also the story of an underdog studio, CD Projekt Red. going from humble distributed in a post-communist Poland to world-renowned developers. The Witcher's journey is full of risks, setbacks, and triumphs. And through it all, Geralt of Rivia has gone from local legend to one of the most recognizable figures in modern fantasy. And maybe that's the true magic. Not the monsters of the magic signs, but the way a story told in the right way can cross borders, languages, and mediums, and still resonate everywhere.